This chart tracks the health of the Social Security Retirement Trust Fund. Take a look at the blue line. That is the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Fund, and right after 2030, it plummets straight into the zero axis. Projections show it hitting depletion by 2032. If we reach that point without a legislative fix, retirees face an immediate, automatic 23% cut to their monthly checks. To understand why this is happening, you have to look at how Social Security is funded. It is a pay-as-you-go system. When taxes are taken out of your paycheck today, that money doesn't sit in a personal vault waiting for you to turn 65. It goes directly to paying the benefits of people who are already retired. That math works beautifully when you have lots of young workers supporting a few retirees. But Americans are living much longer, and we are having far fewer children. The national fertility rate has dropped to around 1.5 births per woman. That means a shrinking base of younger workers is now struggling to support a growing, heavier population of retirees. Closing a gap that massive, a projected $30 trillion shortfall over the next 75 years, exceeds the reach of any single tax tweak. Saving the system will take a coordinated two-front campaign: overhauling federal legislation in the Capitol and overhauling how we work in the cubicle. In Washington, lawmakers are debating specific mathematical trade-offs. The first is pushing the normal retirement age up from 67 to 70. On a spreadsheet, this makes sense. It forces people to pay into the system for a few extra years, delays the point when they start drawing benefits, and expands the nation's total economic output by keeping experienced human capital in the workforce longer. But white-collar math ignores blue-collar reality. A 68-year-old roofer or assembly line worker often cannot physically continue their job. Raising the age limit doesn't magically keep them employed. It frequently diverts them straight into the disability insurance system, which simply shifts the government's financial burden from one program to another. The second major trade-off involves the Social Security payroll tax. Currently, workers pay a 6.2% tax on their earnings, but only up to a strict limit. In 2025, that limit is $176,100. Any income earned above that amount is sheltered from the Social Security tax, which means lower-income workers pay a higher share of their total earnings into the system than the wealthy do. Eliminating this cap entirely would yield massive financial returns. By applying the payroll tax to all wages, regardless of how high they go, projections show we could erase up to 73% of the entire 75-year funding shortfall. Economists warn a sudden tax hike could push corporations to shift compensation into tax-free 401k contributions. To compromise, lawmakers proposed the donut hole. This leaves the current cap in place, but reapplies the tax to all earnings over $400,000. We can adjust tax brackets and retirement ages all day, but manipulating the government spreadsheet will fail if the actual private labor market is unwilling or unable to hire and retain older workers. This brings us to the second front. We have to incentivize older Americans to voluntarily stay in the workforce so they can keep paying into the system. That requires a shift in corporate HR practices. Companies have to build flexible models that accommodate aging bodies, allowing employees to scale back their hours or shift into mentorship roles, rather than forcing them to either work full-time or quit entirely. Effective phased retirement gradually dials down an employee's workload. But rigid frameworks fail. In Germany, a popular block work model essentially had employees work full-time for half their transition period and then not at all for the rest, which defeated the purpose of keeping them continuously engaged. Hiring practices also need an update. We need age-blind hiring to prevent discrimination, and policymakers are pushing to abolish the exemptions that allow older unemployed citizens to stop actively looking for work. For this to succeed, companies must invest in lifelong learning programs so older workers can keep up with new technology. And for those blue-collar roles, physical job conditions must be adapted to accommodate chronic pain and mobility issues. Asking people to stay in the labor force into their 70s is only a viable economic strategy if corporations design jobs that actually fit older human beings. The mid-20th century concept of a hard stop retirement at age 65 is no longer mathematically viable. To survive the demographic shift, we have to execute a dual mandate. We need a modernized federal tax code that accurately reflects today's wealth distribution, paired with corporate practices that value older workers. When both the policy in Washington and the practices in the private sector lock into place, an aging population stops being a looming financial liability. It becomes a pool of experienced, productive capital. Diffusing this massive demographic time bomb preserves the promised safety net while simultaneously expanding the nation's stock of human resources. By keeping experience active and engaged, the United States adds to its total economic resource base, transforming a shrinking workforce into a larger engine for national growth.